My name is Eric Davis. I'm from Chicago, and I'm currently the executive director of an organization called the Base Chicago.
Okay, now, for what people aren't going to know at this particular point, we're going to help them to it anyway. You are from Chicago,
Yes.
and you played basketball at the University of Houston, attended the University of Houston. How do you get from Chicago to Houston?
How did I get to Texas from Chicago? It's a great story. I grew up in a house that was pretty athletic. I was the shortest boy of not only my brothers, but my cousins also. And my cousins were the Hills who lived around the corner and the Lloyds who lived upstairs. And I did things athletically because it was what we did as kids.
Right.
It was what we did to keep out of trouble, stay active, and to stay engaged with our friends. When I first realized that I may be able to use athletics as a way to get an education, because that's actually what I thought. And actually the sport that I loved the most was baseball, by far. And a friend of ours, Terry, was being recruited to play football at the University of Alabama.
Okay.
And, being a kid from Chicago, and we're in a concrete jungle. We didn't even have much grass. We played football in the street,
Right.
and we tackled each other on the concrete. And for Bear Bryant to come to our neighborhood,
oh wow,
that was pretty big back then. We're not talking. There was no social media and all of that, but when you were on national TV back then, it was national TV.
Right. Right.
And next up was my older brother, and he was getting recruited. He was a football player, and when my dad, my younger brother, and myself went out to dinner with Jesse Owens, who was recruiting him to Ohio State, naively, I just thought, yeah, I can't wait till it's my turn to go to college.
My turn, right, yeah.
And that was kind of the approach that I took. And I liked competition. We had a Boys and Girls Club that was close to us, the McCormick Boys and Girls Club. We had great kids in the neighborhood and parents who kept us involved and made sure we were always in an organized activity, because there were so many other organized negative activities in Chicago that would pull you away if you weren't careful. And what's funny is that probably when we first thought of ourselves as athletes, my section of the family, we live in Chicago. My dad was in the military, and he came here and was stationed here in Illinois and got out of the military and decided to find employment here. But my grandparents and a number of cousins and uncles actually lived in Ohio, and I still have a lot of relatives in Ohio. And we would go to Cincinnati and stay the whole summer. And my brother was going into high school. I was coming up next, and there was a guy, he was coaching a high school called Moeller High School. And he reached out to my folks to see if myself and my brothers could permanently live with my grandparents.
In Cincinnati, okay.
And then eventually go to Moeller High School. And we were knuckleheads and we were problems, but we were my mom and dad's problems.
Right.
And they weren't going to, put us on our grandparents, and plus they'd miss us, and, we belonged here as a unit, and that's what we did. So for my brother to go to Ohio State and Terry Major to go to Alabama and even have those opportunities, I started seeing it as a potential reality that this can happen. And I was a baseball player, basketball player, football player, because back in the day, whatever season it was,
right.
we did. And played a lot of hockey too, not just street hockey. We actually had an ice skating rink by our house. Did all of that. And the funny thing is that even to this day, I love baseball more than any other sport. To this day. But the city of Chicago, it's something how they'll make you into a basketball player.
Right. Right.
Where Ohio makes great football players and
Right.
Texas makes great football players, Chicago makes great basketball players, and the media attention and just the attention in general for any other high school sport back then was definitely focused on basketball.
Right. Yeah.
So it was very easy for me to get involved. My high school coach, who I love to death. He's like an uncle. He's like a father. His name is Don Russell. And Coach Russell, just instrumental, only talked about when you go to college. So by the time I'm a sophomore, it's not if I go to college.
It's when, yeah.
It's when and where. And his brother was an NBA great named Cassie Russell.
I've heard that name before, yeah.
Yeah, and Cassie was my mentor. And when I wasn't playing basketball with Cassie Russell, I was playing with Flynn Robinson. And that gave me great access to the game and to understanding the business of basketball and how you get it done academically and how you get it done athletically. They were telling me what college sports, and if you go and play professionally, what it was about before I got there. And that's what I think a lot of our kids are missing now. We look at the Instagram part.
Right.
We look at the go to parties part. But they really spoke to me about how you have to be professional, how you're representing a lot more than the school name on your chest. The real name is the name on the back of your jersey, your parents, right. and what the mission is for you when you go to college. And for me, my parents, my family came to Chicago from South Carolina. And for my folks, they have 6 years of education combined. My dad is 94 and my mom is 89, and they went to school in a time in America where they weren't letting them go to school.
Right, right.
And the real reason we came to Chicago was my folks felt we had a better chance at getting an education. And even when I was a young man and my brothers and sisters are older, I'm next to the baby. My parents really didn't want my brothers and sisters working in the cotton fields of South Carolina and the tobacco fields. Right. And that's how we got to Chicago. And, the athletic gene, my dad would love to tell you that it came from him. And he's a pretty good athlete.
Okay.
He's a pretty good athlete. But the athletic gene actually came from my mother.
Okay.
Had two uncles. They were two of the first African-Americans to play football at Clemson. The cousins that I talked about that lived on the block with me, one played at Iowa State. One played at Wisconsin. My younger brother played at Northern Colorado. I played at Houston. The Lloyds, Calvin Lloyd's daughter is Jewel Lloyd, who was the first pick in the WNBA and a national champion at Notre Dame.
Right.
So it's either the bloodline or it was something in the water that we drank over in Uptown.
So we're narrowing it down. So we decided, obviously you knew you were going to college, as you said. It's not if, it's when, right? So when you're making that decision, we've got basically Big Ten ties. You're near Illinois.
Yes.
Or Northwestern, Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Cassie Russell probably saying Michigan wouldn't be a bad place to go.
Correct.
You've got a brother at Ohio State. Does Guy Lewis swing the tide there, or is just were you an Otis Birdsong fan? How did you end up at Houston?
Well, it's funny that you asked that. I actually, my senior year, it seemed like it snowed every day in Chicago. and every day I walked through the snow, when it wasn't snowing, it was below zero.
Right. It was too cold.
And I was thinking, where am I going to go to school? Where am I going to go to school? And back then, as a kid, you're thinking, man, I'd like to go to Michigan State and play with Magic.
Yeah, wouldn't be bad.
But I had buddies, Ronnie Lester and Kenny Arnold. They were playing over at Iowa.
Right.
So thought about that. Levi Cobb was a great friend. He played at Illinois. So I thought about that. But walking home all winter, my senior year, I made a decision that I was going to go to school somewhere warm. So I then said, you know what? I may go to school. I may go to school here in Chicago. So I was going to go to Loyola University. Literally in the neighborhood. I'm a North Sider, and it's literally right down the street.
Yeah.
And, you know, people don't know they had great ball clubs back then.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Larry Knight, Tony Parker, the father of Tony Parker.
Right.
Champ. There were probably 3 or 4 NBA guys that played on that team. So I said, damn, you know, I'll be in the city. My buddies can all come and see me. And really, to show you how a 17, 18-year-old kid thinks, I'm thinking, I have the dorm right down the street from my buddies. We have a nice crib right in the city.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's going to be great. And the coach got fired.
Oh, okay.
Then I said, okay, now I'm going to start looking. So I went out to USC. My coach wanted me to go to Stanford. I didn't really understand what Stanford was. I clearly know what Stanford is now.
Right.
My mom wanted me to go to Georgetown.
Mm-hmm.
And she wanted me to go to Georgetown because of the coach,
Right.
because she understood the kind of school it was. And she thought, you know what, with John Thompson, I can trust him. He's somebody that understands what I want out of it. And DC weather was like Chicago weather.
Right.
And then I went down to Texas and got down to Texas, and it seemed to be a fit. It seemed to be the type of place I wanted to play at. It was warm. The city was great. And being a kid, I had two buddies from here go to the University of Arkansas. Anthony Brown and Darrell Walker.
Okay.
Both NBA guys.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And I said, what are you doing when you're not playing basketball in Fayetteville, Arkansas? And to this day, they still say,
No wonder that.
that was difficult for them.
Yeah.
And you know, the transition wasn't that difficult going from Chicago to Houston.
Right.
I still could eat the food I liked. I still could hear the music that I liked. And the weather was warm. And then what was really cool, the basketball was like I played in the park. I said, this can't be real. Guy V's theory was, what do we do this game? Score more points. What's the play? Go to the hoop and dunk. We can do that.
Yep.
We can do that. And then what we did is, what was funny is when Guy would recruit, if you were being recruited to the University of Houston, we knew you could play. He would have guys come on recruiting trips and just tell us, socially spend time with him. See if you can live with him. As Guy would say, because he's not going to live with me. And we would see if a guy was a fit. And you know what? You'd find out pretty quickly if a guy was a fit or he wasn't a fit. And almost as a rule, he was right. Everybody that he recruited could play. Everybody that he recruited wasn't the right kind of guy for our team.
Okay. And see, there's something that I don't hear that often, and that's pretty impressive. But it brings to mind what I see from the outside. And again, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but you don't see that a Reed Geddes and a Rob Williams are connected. But obviously, like you said, you know that it's a fit. So
yeah,
you've got a lot of different personalities, a lot of different ways of looking at things, but everyone seemed to mesh.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story. Reed was my freshman. Actually, Reed and Benny Anders, they were my freshmen.
Okay.
And how we work it at the University of Houston is you when you come to school, you get a big brother.
Yeah.
And let me tell you something, night and day.
I would think so, right.
Now, when Reed came on his visit, Reed is a good-looking white kid, about 6'6". He's chiseled. What's funny is he looked like a model. And you know what's funny? His son is a model now.
Okay.
And his son looks like him, and it's like, it's not a stretch. And when Reed came on the visit, we were like, I don't even know why this kid's here on this visit. He's got blonde hair. He's 6'6". His folks are successful in the business community in Texas. He is clearly a University of Texas kid.
Right.
That's where those kids go to school. And we gave him crap. We let him hang out in the method that we talked about, and clearly a good kid. He was that. But we thought we were wasting our time. Why are we doing this dance? And we asked him crazy questions. You ever go out with a black girl? And he, of course, said, not yet. And we thought, oh. And you got to remember, this is 1980, right. 81 in Texas.
Yeah.
So now he has our interest. The tables have now turned. And he felt a little more comfortable. We felt a little more comfortable. But when he left the recruiting trip, we thought, this will last. The next time we see him, he'll be wearing burnt orange.
Right.
And Guy V calls us on Sunday and says, hey, what'd you guys do to that kid? Nothing. We gave him a little bit of poop.
Yeah.
But nothing, no real razzing or anything like that. Goes, he wants to sign with us. I was shocked. And from day one, that he came on campus, and for all the time that he was there with me, couldn't have picked a better teammate, better friend, still friends to this day. It was fantastic. Now, Mr. Anders, I'm going to start off with a dear friend. And if you watch the 30 for 30, we had some issues where we hadn't seen him. For me, it had been probably about 20 years. And for everybody else, it had been 30 years. And many guys in Houston, they haven't seen him anymore.
Right.
And Benny is the best basketball player I've ever played with in my life. And I've played against Michael Jordan and James Worthy, you name them of that era, I played with or against them.
Right.
He is the best basketball player that I've ever played with or against. But the issue with Benny is, could you trust him?
Right.
Would he do the right things? And to be quite honest with you, and I've never said this to anybody, we were so wide open at the University of Houston, so freelance, and I'm not just talking about on the court, off the court too. I mean, can you imagine, Frank, this is 1980 again. 81, 82, 83, 84. We were like the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
And not just in Houston. Every stadium you go to, packed. Every hotel you go to, packed. You can't go out to restaurants. You have to have a private room because too many people come to get your autograph.
Wow.
And you're talking about a team of 12 kids, 10 of them are black. 8 of them are from the Deep South. We've never seen anything like this.
Right.
That wasn't a good environment for Ben. I'll be quite honest.
Sure.
And we see it every day in the pros. The environment was too much for this young man.
Okay.
And we were pro athletes in college.
Right.
And Guy V gave us so much room, he needed more structure. And then when he saw his roommate every day was Hakeem.
Okay.
And then when we would go on the road, God would mix it up. So we build a better bond by staying with each other. And then Hakeem was my roommate. But every day, Benny and Hakeem, and I mean, they were like blood brothers. And to see your roommate go pro, Clyde Drexler lived next door to them. Michael Young lived next door to them. Cadillac Anderson lived on the other side. All of these guys not only go pro, first round.
Right.
And you're better than the whole lot of them. He's not guessing it.
Yeah.
This is for sure.
Right. And you're saying it as well, right?
I'm saying it as well. When you play on a team that everybody goes pro, everybody that I played with, because I played on the first Final Four team where we lost in the finals, in the semifinals to North Carolina, the year they won the national championship. Every guy on my team signed a pro contract. It's unheard of.
It's insane.
That's unheard of.
It's insane, yeah.
And now when I'm with my kids, the first thing I tell my kids is, I want you to hear my story, but don't even try to duplicate this story.
Right.
It's impossible because we don't know how it happened.
Right.
We became Phi Slamma Jamma, and in the midst of it, Frank, we had no idea who we were. I didn't know that in 2020 you would want to talk about what I was doing in 1980 and 82 and 80. Who would know that?
It was just happening, right?
If I knew that then, I'd have all of their jerseys and all of their sneakers, and I'd be selling them right now.
Right.
But we were just in the moment. But what we did do is we really loved each other. We really pushed each other. The thing that was fun and fair is you had 5 guys that started and 5 more that were always pissed off because they believed they should be starting.
Mm-hmm.
So the competition every day was fierce, and that's what makes you better. And those things translate when you move into life. And I take everything that I learned from being an athlete, and I transfer that to my kids at the base Chicago.
Okay.
That this is a fight. You're going to get knocked down some. You're going to get beat some. But what are we doing on the next play? Are you willing to get up? Are you willing to be the best you can be? Because that's the only thing I will not accept. If you're not trying to be the best you can be, if you're not really trying to be a champion, I probably don't want to hang out with you.
Doesn't matter, right?
You know, I'm that type of guy. I want people that are really trying to achieve the ultimate for themselves and for the group. And then when we're in a group setting, can you take back a little bit of the individual accolades that we all crave for the betterment of the team?
Well, I think the thing that we run across, and at least this is what's happened in my life, is that the better I am, if I'm a team player, the better the team is. And the better the team is, the better that I will be. And you mentioned some of the people playing the NBA now, they don't see that. Because they're puffed up to begin with, so their achievement is based on what they do, not based on what we do. And I think we see that in community as well. And what you're talking about with what you're giving back is we can all be great if we're all great. If we all do what we're supposed to do, we'll all be better.
Yeah, and it was easier to teach that when I was younger.
Right.
The difficulty today is that we really live in a me society now,
right.
And not just kids. You know, look at me on Instagram. Look at
right.
me on Facebook. You have everybody talking and no one listening. I want the biggest shine, and for me, all I ever wanted, the college I wanted to go to, was UCLA.
Okay.
They were great then.
Oh yeah.
I tell kids that, and it's like, I don't even know if you're really a basketball player if you haven't studied the history of this.
Right.
And kids are like, well, what's that have to do with? I'm like, that has something to do with everything. If you don't really understand this, you can't make me believe you have great passion for this. And I wanted to go to UCLA because that was the stamp that you had arrived.
Right.
I never wanted to play in the NBA. If I played professional basketball, I wanted to play in the ABA, but I really wanted to be a Major League Baseball player. NBA was never on my radar. But once I became a basketball player, I wanted to go to UCLA.
Well, let's look at it this way. What game put Houston on the map?
Knocking off UCLA.
Yeah.
And actually, in wanting to go to UCLA, they said, we recruit guys from LA and New York. We are not interested. So part of me saying, I looked at USC, Stanford, part of that was, I went to Memphis on a visit. I went to Jacksonville. I said, oh, you don't? I'm going to look at schools that have given you problems.
Right. Okay.
That was.
Okay. That's part of Houston. Right. Exactly.
And that's part of that competitive edge. Oh, you don't want to see me in your uniform? You'll see me.
You'll see me in your nightmares. Right. Yeah.
You're going to see me. And that was another reason why I ended up in Houston. I wanted an opportunity to do something legendary, not by myself. I mean, I could have golfed if I wanted to do that.
Right.
I wanted to do something legendary. And I wanted to play on a great UCLA type team. And to play on a team like that, who a lot of what they do in the NBA now is based on the style that we did then.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
I mean, we were before the Lakers. You know, we were before the Bulls. We were before UNLV.
You were Showtime before there was Showtime, right?
Yes. We were the kind of basketball that coaches would sit you down for. We were the kind of basketball that they would say, you're a hot dog. But you know why we beat so many guys? You got black guys on the team. We'd be afraid to play BYU, but we're not going to be afraid to play a Big Ten team because you know what? Eventually, instinctively, you're going to start trying to play like us.
Right.
Because it's in your DNA. And you know what? You can't do this. You can't do this because this is what we do.
And one thing I think people, when we talk about it being Showtime, one thing I think people forget is you guys played some unbelievable defense because you got the big guy in the middle waiting, and you got 6-7 guys roaming the passing lanes. I mean, my goodness.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. It's easy to take risks when you have a guy that's 7 feet tall and jumps 40 inches off the ground under the basket.
Right.
When you have Larry Mishaw at 6'9" and built like a bodybuilder,
right,
and he jumps about 40 inches off the ground. It's easy to say, I can do what I want out here.
Right.
I got some backup underneath. You know, you got Clyde Drexler, who's long and lean and 6'7", and I don't remember if he did, but he was probably pretty close in steals in the nation, and a great rebounder. So that gave us great leeway to do a number of things. I remember we were playing Arkansas, and Eddie Sutton said, no, we've been studying the tape of these guys. We know what they like to do. We know where they like to go with the ball. And I thought that was amazing because we didn't have one play.
He's scouting things that didn't exist.
We didn't know where the ball was going to go. And it was funny to hear scouting reports on us because we didn't even need to change. There was no game that was the same. We were going to play hard, aggressive basketball the way we liked. If we had one Achilles heel, we didn't shoot free throws well. And that cost us some national championship.
Yeah.
Some. And we were shooting them so bad. I remember guys saying, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're shooting them so bad, we might as well not practice. And if we don't practice, at least we have an excuse of why we're shooting them so bad.
That's crazy. Now, does Darrell Walker tell Eddie Sutton, Coach, I think you got it wrong.
No, you know what? They were loaded too at
Oh
Arkansas.
yeah. Oh yeah.
They were loaded. They had, the triplets were there. U.S. Reed.
Mm-hmm.
My buddy when I first got down to Texas, he's over at A&M, Sonny Parker, and Sonny's son Jabari.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, the guys at Arkansas love for us to come because they knew we can get a little loose because we have to compete with these guys.
Right.
But they did a great job at the University of Arkansas.
Oh yeah.
And they're still doing a great job down there. But probably for us, had we had a little more structure, and believe me, I don't trade Guy V for all the tea in China. We were what we were, and you can't go back and, can I put some coaches in that I'd say, if this coach coached us, there'd be 3 now? I think I could.
But then again, it's how would you have played leading up to, so.
It would have made us different.
Yeah.
It would have made us different.
Right.
It would have made us different. And I'll tell you, I think part of the problem is with what happened in '83 is just for a moment, Guy decided to coach.
Yeah. I think I know the spot where you're talking about, yeah.
And you come with the girl you dance with.
Right.
North Carolina State did a fantastic job of not being baited in. We're just going to do what we do. And really coming out and giving a great compliment. We cannot compete with you the way you want to compete.
So we're not even going to try.
We're not even going to try. And we're going to discipline ourselves to stay within our game plan. See, that's what the typical person, to see the end of the game, that's not the story. For them to even be there at the end of the game,
right,
and how they did that was the great trust level they had in their coach and what they believed in each other, that we can do this if we keep this close. They knew that this couldn't be an 80-something game or not. We can't keep up with these guys like that. But if we keep it in the 50s, low 60s, we're going to have a chance. Right. And my hat goes off to them for doing what they had to do to get a national championship.
And not getting flustered.
Absolutely. Because you have to remember, even the fans wanted to see Phi Slamma Jamma. Go ahead and finish this. Because most people were saying, if you remember, the national championship game, that happened on Saturday.
I was one of them, yeah. I was one of them.
And you know what? That may be and may stand as the greatest college game of all time. My hat goes off to Louisville, too. What do you say about them? They were fantastic. Fantastic.
As you were ticking off, former future number 1 players and Hall of Famers and all that, I mean, gee, you got it right there as well.
Yeah. And you know what? As you get older and you really get a chance to sit back and observe and appreciate, you sit back and you're like, wow. These guys weren't just guys in blue jerseys or red jerseys. They were some guys.
Right.
And I think what North Carolina State did is really a great story if you're a basketball player. If you really love the game and you love to study it. They did what they had to do for one game. Had there been a 3-game series or 5-game series? But you know what? That's not how college basketball works. Right. You got 40 minutes. 40 minutes. And they did what they had to do for every second of those 40 minutes. And my hat goes off to them.
Well, and see, that's something that I don't know that other people would even think of, that coming out of your mouth, of saying, yeah, we did what we had to do, but they did it better at that particular point in time. Most people would say, there's got to be some excuse or some reason. No excuses.
Right.
And that transitions, I think, into, again, what we were talking about, how we go about our lives from there. You put it all on the line, you do what you can, you try to be the best that you are, and some days it works. Some days, unfortunately, it doesn't. You get back up and you go again.
A great plan and great strategy always works. It may not work today, but
Right.
if you keep planning and keep having a good strategy, eventually it's going to work. I remember we would go out to begin games. I remember LaSalle Thompson,
Oh, yeah.
plays for Texas. He's an
Mhm.
All-American. He's going to be a first-round pick. You know what LaSalle Thompson said when I went to the circle to meet him and shake his hand? You guys take it easy on us today.
Really?
And I said to myself, you're beat. Now we're just going to figure out what the score is going to be.
Right.
We would do silly things. Like on the first play of the game, we would force guys to the middle and tell a king, jump up and grab the ball out of the air. We know they're going to call goaltend. And many times it wasn't goaltend. They'd just never seen anything like that. And they would go in thinking they had an easy layup, and he wouldn't block it. He would literally snatch it out of the air. And we did that for effect. He'd be sitting on the bench, and there'd be guys like this, faking and
He's not even in the game. Fantastic.
But those are the types of things that great talent, great spirit, and teamwork you could create. And I am just so humbled and blessed to have had the opportunity. What's funny is that until the 30 for 30 came on, people were like, Mr. Davis, you never said you played for Phi Slamma Jamma. And I said, that was a couple lifetimes ago. Since then, I've been running 501c3s for the better part of the last 10 or 12 years. And in between that, I was a Chicago police officer for 27 years. Had my small stint in the NFL and playing European basketball. And then it was being at the University of Houston. I'm married, I have kids and father, and pretty soon going to be a grandfather.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. So, that's an early chapter. If you ask, I'll tell you, but.
Well, and you touched on something very important. The stuff that's very visual to us, that we remember. Again, you were there for a short amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so you leave college, what do? Or is it that's all you are? So again, you said police officer for 27 years.
Yes.
That's a lot longer than college basketball player.
Absolutely.
So you're giving back to the community.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing something that's, is an incredible thing if you understand what a police officer has to go through on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
And then running 501(c)(3)s and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
How does that parlay into the base?
Well, having a front row seat of a show that you really don't want to see, and that is the carnage of Black and brown communities, and in particular, young Black men. The violence rate and the poverty rate of Chicago is disturbing. So you're thinking every day while you're in the squad car, what do I do to improve this? Being the police, that's easy. If he did this and he did that, but you have long stretches of time where there's nothing to do. So this is crazy. I don't know if you know this or not. When I was a young police officer, we started rapping. And we did that with the kids just on the downtime. Let's do this just to make a connection. They didn't even call it community policing. It was the neighborhood that we first came in. That's where I was working, the Cabrini Green Housing Project.
Okay.
So for me, it was just, being cool. I was just maybe 24, 25. I'm still young. Not much older than many of the guys that I'm talking. They're 17, 18.
Right.
So we're rapping and talking, and they're asking, how'd you become the police? So it's a segue into having, this is how you can do this, at least. And I'm from the building over there. You were from here? Yeah, da-da-da-da-da, this and that. So we started rapping, and if I had to give a grade, Frank, we're about a C-. Some days Some days, the music's loud enough, we might be a C plus.
Okay.
But that was it. And what happened then is that there is a journalist here who does a lot of national shows now named Bill Curtis. And Bill Curtis said, hey, we got word that you guys are rappers. And think, you're talking about 86, 87. It was
Right.
so much negative connotation connected to rap music and the police.
Right.
We were like, no, we're not rappers. And he goes, no, I heard you guys are pretty good rappers. We're like, no, we're not rappers. He comes back a week later and says, guys, please, I want to do a story on you. What you guys are doing is amazing. And we said, well, I don't know. I don't know if the police department's going to appreciate it. It has to go through the channels. They said, we'll talk to you guys when you're not on duty. And we're like, oh, okay. Bill Curtis comes and we do this interview and we're like, look, we don't need this all over. He goes, how about this? I'll just put it on, the 5 o'clock news. Because not too many people watch the 5 o'clock. We're like, yeah, okay. We do the interview, tons of kids. He gets done looking at the interview and he goes, this was a great piece. He goes, I don't even need to see it on TV yet. He goes, I might put it on the 10 o'clock too.
Uh-oh.
And now we're frankly like, whatever, go ahead. He puts it on the 5 o'clock. My phone won't stop ringing, and we didn't have cell phones then.
Right.
And I'm trying to remember if we even had beepers. He puts it on the 10 o'clock news. Now the world blows up. And people are calling from all over the country. Because then what happens is CBS National takes it,
Right.
puts it on national news. Now this thing is going crazy. About 3 days later, we get a call in the police station from a guy that says, hey, I'm with United Talent Agency. I want to come and see you. And I'm thinking, what's United Talent Agency? And they give their spiel of what that is. And we're laughing. Like, yeah, okay. He goes, where can I meet you? And we're like, meet us at Cabrini.
Yeah.
Come here if you're serious.
Right.
And his name was David Schiff. He calls back the next day and says, you know what? I'll be there in about a week. I'll come and see you. We'll sit down and talk. I want to talk a few things out with you. And we're like, fine. He then calls back 2 days later, not a week later even, and says, hey, I'm going to be in Chicago tomorrow. I was in New York, but I'm going to be in Chicago tomorrow. Can I meet you? Yeah, come through. This is where we are. We're out there talking, and it's a hot summer day. And I mean, there are thousands of people out. Music is blaring. We see this white guy walking, and as he walks closer and closer, he looks more expensive each step he takes. Haircut, his suit. Who the hell is this guy? And he goes, are you guys the Slick Boys? That's what they call us, the Slick Boys. And we said, yeah. He goes, I'm David Schiff. I told you I was coming to see you. Can you guys take off? I'm like, yeah. We'll take off the rest of the day because I want to take you guys out to dinner and make a business proposition. Sure. We go to a place called Gene and Georgetti's, which is all of our favorite restaurant at that time. We're going to, if nothing else, we're going to smoke a cigar, get a free dinner, and we're good with it. And we'll go back to what we're doing. We get in there and we start talking, and he says, listen, I think that we can make a movie about you guys.
Wow.
And we're shocked. We're like, really? And he goes, I want to go back to LA. I want to tell them what I had, and we'll go from there. Can you guys get ready? And when I tell you to come out to LA, can you guys be ready to get out to LA? And we said, yeah, absolutely. 2 days later, he calls. And he says, hey, I got some bad news. I can't get a movie done about you, but I do have about 5 studios that want to do a TV show about you. Can you guys get on a plane tomorrow? We're like, yeah. We get on a plane, fly out to LA. We meet with Sony at 9 o'clock. Sony's making their pitch. We could do this cop show, ... It's going to be great. You guys will give us input on what's real, tell us your stories. I'm like, yeah, okay, no problem. We go to the next meeting over at Universal, and there's this old guy with like a floppy hat and shorts on and all scruffy. And he tells us point blank, you're not leaving this meeting. You're going to sign here and we're going to move on and do what we do. We're going to give you a record deal. You're going to be with Universal and we're going to do this TV show. And that guy's name was Dick Wolf.
Okay.
So we do that and we create this TV show called New York Undercover.
Yeah, I heard of that.
And we did New York Undercover. We were the consultants and the leads on telling Malik Yoba and the guys how to do this, telling the guys that wrote the stories. And then what we did is with the proceeds we got from Hollywood, we created computer centers and created educational opportunities for kids in Cabrini Green and Robert Taylor. And what we also did is we created the largest, at the time, inner city Little League baseball program in the country.
Great.
So that was the big splash from stepping outside of my lane and doing something that I'd never had on my radar. And once I got into the business of working with our community in an impactful way, that has become my addiction because there's so much that we have to give to get people where they need to be.
It just seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you start out, this is the same thing going back to, if I do my best, then we all do our best. And if I seek to do the right thing without trying to make it the big thing, the big thing comes.
That's almost been the recipe for me. You just do what's right. And you dedicate yourself to it. And you don't make it about you.
Right.
And what we do at the Base Chicago is this. At the Base Chicago, we're an athletic and academic program. And the kids really believe and think it's about athletics. And I'm here to tell you it's really about academics. You can play football, 7-on-7 football, baseball, girls softball, or dance at our program. I intentionally have not started a basketball program on the west side of Chicago because I could do that probably in about 15 minutes.
Right.
So to participate in any of our activities, you have to pay a fee. And how you pay that fee is this. You have to show up to tutoring. You have to show up to other academic enhancement, whether it's selective enrollment test prep, SAT prep, and you have to do community service. So the kids do that as their tuition. Then they're able to participate in these sports activities, but this is the part that they love. And this pandemic is scaring me because we can't pay what we usually pay. When the summer comes, they've been practicing since October. Now it's May, school's out. Now we take our kids all over the country to compete. And when they go play baseball or they go to a dance contest, whether it's in Boston, Indianapolis, Pittsburgh, Louisville, Kentucky, they know that they're going to compete in their sport or activity, but they also know that we're going to connect an educational activity to it.
Right.
And also a community service project. That's what we do at the base. And now with this pandemic, because I've worked with some of the poorest kids in the country and obviously the poorest kids in the state of Illinois. My kids, a real issue for my kids has been this. My kids, about 90% of them have no access to technology in their home, nor do they have devices. Here in Chicago, I don't know if you're aware of this, the kids went on Christmas break. When they came back, schools went on strike. They went to school for about 3 weeks. after the strike, before the pandemic hit.
Right.
So our kids who are technology challenged are now home, and they really haven't been to school in 2020 at all.
Right.
It doesn't look like school's going to start up again.
Right.
And hopefully we have a handle on this thing by September. But my kids are suffering because they don't have the devices to do what they need to do. We have a computer center at the base,
but
no one can get to it.
Right.
And our next goal is we have a fundraiser that we're doing that people can buy base gear. And what we're going to do with those proceeds is hopefully buy at least 50 to 75 computers for the families, where they'll have a computer in their home, where they can connect to educational programming to stay on track. But that's important stuff. Right. That's important stuff.
But they'll still have to have internet service and all of that.
And we will get that. And what is happening with the city is now they see the disparity and they see the shortcoming, especially in communities like West Garfield Park, where we're located. So they're starting to provide that.
Okay.
Because they're chasing, because no one could imagine this. Even though the thing you couldn't imagine, I've been talking about our kids suffering through another pandemic, which is gun violence, which is just as devastating over there, and poverty, because those are the issues. Really, everything I talk about and what I'm in this business for is really to eradicate poverty. That is my goal. And if I can get people that want to hear Phi Slamma Jamma stories or playing in the NFL stories or New York Undercover stories, as long as we can get to my kids and what we're doing and the reason that we're doing it. And to show people that, you know, when I talk about my kids, I want you to understand I'm really talking about myself.
Right.
You know, the difference between my kids and me, I was 6'3", could jump pretty high and run pretty fast. So people outside of the community had an interest in me. And maybe not even a full interest that was about me and for my best interest.
Right.
But they had an interest.
Right.
There are many kids that are just as talented as Eric Davis was, and Sam Hill, and Theo Hill, and Kelly Davis, and Calvin Lloyd. There are many people in the neighborhood I serve that are just as talented. And I'm not talking about athletically. But we have to give them a platform to demonstrate that. And I think that's my job to do that. And there are a lot of doors that open because I played at Phi Slamma Jamma, because I was a police officer, because I was in the NFL, because I've done Hollywood stuff. And people find out pretty quickly that I'm not really interested in talking about my stuff. I'm usually interested in talking about my kids' stuff.
Right. Well, I think what we miss is the understanding of why we had, and I'm maybe jump a little further afield than this, but the initial reason for athletic scholarships.
Student athlete.
Right. That to me is one word.
Yeah.
No hyphen, no, it's all one word.
Yeah.
But I think that we've missed that with, well, I can go do this and end up in the NBA, or I can end up in the first round of the NFL, or I can get a bonus baby deal in Major League Baseball or something. And that's all fine and good if it happens. But that's not why you're getting there. That's not why you should be trying to get there.
No, Frank, my story is, and that's why I'm afraid to tell my story sometimes. Because if I tell my story to kids, it's like, I don't want to tell you the outcome of what happened to my team, because you may think it was that easy.
Right.
And the truth of the matter is that a tenth of the 1% can do this for a living.
Right.
That's not when you turn pro. What we are telling our kids, if you're fortunate enough, if you're blessed, and this isn't as difficult as you think, to get an athletic scholarship anywhere, and I'm talking about junior college,
right,
to Georgia,
something, right, exactly.
Someone will pay for you to get an education. You've gone pro.
Yeah.
Because you're really going to be a pro at the next thing you do a lot longer than if you are in a league, then you'll be there. I was in the NFL for 6 months. I was a policeman 27 years.
Right.
You know, it's the next thing. And even guys that play in the league 10 years, their next career is going to be longer than that career. So that's the blessing. Can you help your parents? My parents couldn't afford to send myself and my brothers to school. Would not have happened. Would not have happened. I would have gone to the Marine Corps, without a doubt, had I not had an athletic scholarship. And I know a lot of kids face the same things that I faced then. You know, you're talking about 1978 to now, but nothing's changed in many of the neighborhoods.
Right.
Poverty level hasn't changed, the educational level. You know, we still have many kids in our community on the west side of Chicago that when they graduate high school, they will be the first high school graduate in their family.
Right.
You know, what many people don't understand is you got to look at legacy and you got to look at history. And Chicago, the vast majority of African Americans, the vast majority of African Americans from Chicago are from where? In the South. Where do you think they're from? Where do you think they're from?
They're probably from, you know, the Carolinas, that, like you were talking about.
No, they're not from the Carolinas.
No.
One specific state.
Florida?
No.
I'm completely lost then.
They're from Mississippi.
Oh, okay.
Almost as a rule. And now I'm going to tell you this data about Mississippi. What's goes back and forth, bottom or just out of the bottom? What's the poorest state in the United States?
Oh yeah, Mississippi.
So where do you think they have the worst school system in the United States because of the poorest?
Exactly, right.
So now when I tell you that and I tell you, yeah, they have the worst school system in the country because they're the poorest, and that's for white kids. How do you think the black kids in Mississippi think?
Exactly.
And those families have moved to Chicago, and they moved to Chicago for economic opportunity. But you still drag your old baggage with you.
And as you said, not necessarily for educational opportunity, but for economic opportunity.
Parents come for economic opportunities, and they're hoping that they can indoctrinate their kids into getting an education. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to change the narrative. We are really trying to change the narrative of, you know what? It's not about being a hooper. It's not about being a drug dealer. It's not about this get-rich-quick scheme. And those are get-rich-quick schemes. It's really about hard work and saving your money and learning how to be responsible and accountable and trying to become great as a group. Not just make you better, got to make someone else better.
Right.
My lead was important, as my big brother's lead was important to me. I had a responsibility to be a good lead to my younger brother. That was important to me. And he was a lead to my cousins.
Right.
And that's how it works in a family. That's how it works in a real family. And what we're doing at the base is we approach the whole community as our family. If some of us have gone out and had experiences that others have not, but we know that they need them, we must bring that to them. When our kids go out and they've been to New York and they've been to Boston and they've been to Pittsburgh, they come back and they're like celebrities. Because the only places people in the community have been, Frank, is to jail.
Right. Well, I like what you say is, okay, in order to be involved, you have to pay. There is tuition involved, but it's not money. It's time, community service. It's you have to have the grades. You have to be ready to evolve. And that is what you have to pay in order to get what you want.
In life.
In life, exactly. Exactly. And then now you've learned to share. You've learned to give back. You've learned to try and excel in order to get what you want. I like to go play in a tournament in Las Vegas or in Seattle or something like that. You want to do that? Great. Here's what you have to do.
Absolutely. And really where we get our most growth is my competitive nature that I can't turn down. But I do turn it down is, of course, I'd love to go out and win every tournament. And it'd be pretty easy to do that. I have enough kids that I could go and hand pick in the neighborhood.
Right.
But I would never do that. And where we get our most growth is when we get those kids that show up who are studs, but they haven't paid their fair share of tuition.
Right.
And we have to tell them, you're not getting on the plane.
Right.
You're not getting on the bus. Well, I'm better than him.
Doesn't matter.
At baseball. At baseball. But not the big picture. You could learn a lot from him.
I think if you, I don't want to try and put words in your mouth, but you go back to when you had in Reed Geddes and Benny Anders. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know what Reed's doing now. I know he was with Athletes in Action for a while there.
He's an attorney with ExxonMobil, and he does ESPN for the Pac-12.
Okay. But I know for a while there, I think he was in Cincinnati, if I'm not mistaken, with Athletes in Action or something along those lines. So, again, you have someone who's taken that platform and has given back. Mm-hmm. And then, as you said, you have Benny Anders that is like you said, the best player you ever saw, who didn't take that platform and do something with it. So it's a matter of what do you do with what you have.
Part of the disservice that we do for many athletes is we don't hold them accountable.
Right.
And we don't hold them accountable, not because we want to look out for him. It's usually for that coach's benefit. I want to win this AAU tournament.
Right, exactly.
I want to make a good showing so my other kids, I know guys are coming to look at him, so I want to make sure that he's there performing. No one wants to do the hard teaching.
Right.
When our best players doesn't act like the best leaders, we have to be the leaders.
Right.
And make the tough decisions. And you know what? Those kids grow. You don't have to like vegetables in my house, but you're going to eat them.
Right.
Not good to you, but good for you.
Right. You can do the right thing.
I remember when we were in practice, and I bet you there had to be 30 NBA scouts in the stands. And we're playing hard, and Benny says, today, we're going to crush you guys. And I was mostly the sixth man. And I could either, you had a red jersey or a white jersey. I said, what did you say to them, Benny? He goes, today, I am going to crush them. And they wore the white jerseys. I said, I'm putting on my white today. I'm playing with Benny. So every time he gets the ball, he's going to the hoop on three guys that could be top 50 greatest of all time, dunking on him, shooting J's on him. And Guy V's doing everything he can because he doesn't want the red team, the starters, to be continuing getting beat by the white team.
Right.
And all the scouts are in here, and Guy V's not blowing the whistle, and the game is getting rough. We break out fighting. We fight each other. And there's 30 NBA scouts in the stands. Guy V says, okay, you guys get out of here. After we finally get this thing broke up, we're like, we're not going anywhere. We just need you to make the calls.
Yeah.
And we continued to practice, and the NBA scouts were like, oh my God, I'll take him, I'll take him, I'll take him. They just couldn't believe the intensity level. And you know what? What if we approached being doctors like that?
Right.
What if we approached being attorneys like that? What if every time we had $1 and we were going to make an economic decision, we did it with that intensity in our community? See, we are great. You hear black folks say all the time, I ain't scared of nothing. I ain't scared of nobody. We are afraid of the things we shouldn't be.
Right.
And not afraid of the things we should be.
And you said it exactly. Today, I'm going to be great. You should be able to say that every day. Today, I'm going to be great.
How can you live, especially during these times when we have time for reflection, real reflection, to see who you are? And you know what? We don't know who's going to make it through this or not. Why wouldn't you reflect to say, you know what? If I get another chance to go out here, breathe fresh air, good air, I'm going to try to be great. I'm going to try to be a better person. I'm going to try to make an impact and a legacy. You want to live forever? You don't have to live forever by living forever. You can live forever by your good and great acts. and gifts of knowledge that you give people who carry them on and speak your name?
I had a little typed out piece of paper that was on my desk where I could see it, or on the wall in front of me. What did you do today to make somebody else's day better?
Yes.
And some days you would just gloss right over it. You know, yeah, I wrote that a few months ago, and you not ignored it. One day I looked at it and I said, you know what? I put that there for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Why did I put that there?
Mm-hmm.
Because it makes my day better.
Yes.
So I live by that. What did I do today to make somebody else's day better? Might have been a simple thing. And especially where we are now, you know, it's kind of hard to do that. But we have to reach out. You send an email, you send a text, whatever. Did I make somebody else's day better today?
Well, let me ask you this, Frank.
Okay.
You know, if this pandemic had stricken me and I was one of the victims who passed away, and God rest their souls. You know, for me, I could say, and at my funeral they could say, he lived.
Right.
The question I pose to your audience, have you lived? Have you been a good father? Have you been a good neighbor? Have you been a good brother? Have you been a good husband? Are you trying to be great?
Right. And sometimes you make mistakes along the way.
Oh, man.
That happens.
Oh, man. That's part of it, Frank.
Yeah.
That's part of it. But we do know we have many that are not trying to be great at all.
Right.
And
that's
if today was your funeral, because I'm seeing many people that are relatively healthy and relatively young, and if anyone, because I didn't hear anyone 5 weeks ago telling me about a pandemic.
Right.
So you know a year ago and 5 years ago, no one was telling you about a pandemic. And if we would have heard about it, we'd have said, this guy's crazy. What's wrong with him?
They're going to shut down the world? Really? No.
If you get a chance to hit the reset button, what's your goal? What's your goal? And that's not a question that I need you to answer or type in, because you know what? You're going to write the right thing. And if it doesn't look right, you're going to erase it, and you're going to write the thing that gets you likes. What's the answer that you can live by?
It is that piece of paper that was hanging in my office. That's it. That is, there's nothing else to it. Did I make somebody else's day better today, or did I try to?
Exactly.
If I can say that, I'm good.
Exactly.
I'm good.
Exactly.
Well, I think that is the way to leave it. I think that was perfect.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you very much. We'll reach back to you again. Let's stay in touch, because there are only so many people in the world that are trying to do what you're trying to do. And I want to be involved with what you're trying to do. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Frank. I appreciate the time and the opportunity.